name is Ama Pratt. This is The Couch, your choice for sharp analysis and critical views on the headlines. Tonight we are doing something a little different. Tonight we are going to be sort of having a bit of an editorial, on what happened on Monday. That's the National Youth Day, where ex-President John Dramani Mahama met the youth and had the youth engage us, on what the NDC's youth manifesto is. They launched that manifesto. Also that same night, we all went with them to the Bukom Arena. Those of us who went there in person, watched on TV. A very interesting engagement. Tonight, our plan is to critically analyze these two engagements because at the heart of all of these engagements is policy, what the NDC intends to do for the youth of this country. We call ourselves the future leaders. I said ourselves. We'll talk about that too. Who qualifies as youth, overall, and what are the main issues? What are your take-homes? But what are the issues, essentially, is our conversation for this evening. I have been joined by Patrick Stevenson. He happens to be a policy analyst, and together we will try and make some sense, of all of the policy issues and everything in between that happened, on the Youth Day. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Like we always say, the NDC is law-abiding. The NDC will do everything because we are the midwives of Ghana's democracy. We will do everything to protect the democracy, but we shall not become the victims of peace. If anybody wants peace, let us all of us sit and negotiate peace. If you draw your dagger, we will draw our dagger. We will do everything as legal and law-abiding citizens. We shall not foment trouble anywhere. But the elections of 2020, Techiman South will not repeat itself again. We shall take power. And I repeat, we shall take power, come what may, through every legal means on the 7th of December. May God bless our hustle as young people. Long live the NDC, long live President Mahama and Auntie Nana, long live Ghana, and long live the Ghanaian youth. Thank you very much. Like we always say, the NDC is law-abiding. The NDC will do everything because we are the midwives of Ghana's democracy. We will do everything to protect the democracy, but we shall...
Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Like I said before, that very interesting break, we've been joined by Patrick Stevenson. I had to literally hunt him down for tonight's conversation. Hi, Patrick.
Yeah, hi, Emma. Good
to have you here. It's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be behind the cameras again.
Yeah.
To talk
How
about
does that feel?
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Do you know what my plans are?
Don't announce these plans publicly. Don't put these plans publicly.
I mean,
don't put these plans publicly.
So I'll leave my plans.
Yeah.
But it's great to have you here.
It's good,
I saw
to be
you there, at the UPSC auditorium.
Yeah.
I was with Ivan. I said to Ivan, "Oh, we are doing this. we are doing this. I'm happy that you are here. So grateful that you are here." What did you make? We'll get to Pablo in a minute.
Right.
But what did you make of that experience from the beginning to the end? The vibe. It was a youth event. What did you make of it?
Well, so I mean, I got thrown an invitation. Obviously, I'm sure as a young person in this country. So don't put guns to my head yet, right? Obviously, it was International Youth Day, and so I think that the matters and the issues that confront the youth of the country, I think are things that should be of concern to somebody like me. Even though these days I don't like to be classified as you. I think sometimes we just have to accept the reality. That I mean, once the fourth floor knocks on your door, I mean, youth is 18 to I'd say 30. I mean, once you cross 30, I know our politicians don't like it. They get very uncomfortable with it. And I'm not sure why a lot of young people, also don't want to acknowledge it. You grow old. I may not look it, but you grow old. So I think that the opportunity to see what young people are thinking and the energies, that were in the room, and most importantly to hear what was of primary concern to them, including myself, I think was quite refreshing. It also gives you a sense that it is not just, that event, but I think that when you get on social media elsewhere, you get a sense that young people are they're tired of being at the backbench, and they really want to be at the forefront. It's not only in Ghana. You've seen that happen in places like Kenya. Nigerians are equally rambling at the same time. So as political as the event itself was, but I think that it demonstrates a certain commitment of young people to actively participate in decision making, right? And so it was good, and it was good to connect to some very old folks that I haven't seen in a while. I've stayed away from public engagements for a while, so it was good to see a lot of actors in the policy space, those who are working for government, those who've been in government before. And it was great. I think it was a great event. Some of the policy propositions, which I'm sure you're going to get into very soon, were quite interesting. As a policy enthusiast. I was fascinated by some of the stuff I heard, but
we'll get there. We'll get there. I have to say that as I sat in that room, at some point, I picked up my phone and I sent Pablo a message, and I just said to him, congratulations, because it's novel, right?
Yeah.
The way that it was done. Normally we hear the politicians tell us what their policies are.
I see what you mean.
Yes, but for the first time, we had the youth themselves kind of lead the conversations. My personal favorite had to be the man from the mining sector.
Okay.
Because he didn't sound NDC. He simply said that we're invited.
Yeah.
To come and sort of share what our concerns were. We did. I'm excited that I see that they've incorporated, our feelings into this document. That gives me hope, that things would go well. And I enjoyed it. Unlike you who engages with policy, for the rest of us lame people, policy tends to be boring. It can be a drag. It can be like sitting there for hours thinking, oh, get on with it. Right?
Yeah.
This was exciting. It was engaging.
Perhaps it's hearing from different people, right? Because like you indicated, when public engagements like that have come up, the thinking always has been, okay, who has prepared the document and who's perhaps the most articulate person to speak to it, right? And so this person gets on the podium, rambles through a bunch of stuff, and everybody claps and everybody goes home, and we're back to business as usual. So I mean, I'd imagine that it's, getting different people to speak to different aspects of it. And, just, managing to bring, you manage to drag somebody like me who's not, publicly engaging in activities like that, to sit there and, perhaps just hear, what exactly the political party had to offer, but also what the youth, wanted to make in terms of demands from the flag bearer of the party, right? And so there were very interesting ideas, like I said, some of which I'm sure you are ready to
I'm ready.
Put a sword,
I'm ready. I'm so ready. I'm so ready. But let's start with what Pablo himself had to say, and we just played, for me perhaps can we call it a highlight, an interesting point, you know, of his submission, where I find him sort of. So here's what I think actually about that. For a moment, I thought he was deviating, and then I thought, wait, he started by pledging the youth's support and the youth's commitment, you know, to a Mahama win. That's directly, but indirectly to say that all of these things that we are dreaming, we promise you that we will bring the victory so we can actualize, right?
Yeah.
That sits perfectly well for me. I think that the interesting aspect of what he says, which I expected to sort of become more topical than it has become, is when he says we will open fire for fire. You know, what do you make of that? That's typical Pablo, no?
I'm not a political scientist, right? So, I mean, this is going to be my hastened, you know, ordinary man's reading of that, which is that, I mean, we have to, anybody who looks at that, you know, first of all, you need to think on two levels. One, that there are real issues that obviously are going to get articulated at some point. But it's also a very competitive political environment, you know, we find ourselves in. I'm sure political scientists will understand that from that competitive political standpoint, I don't think, you know, the propositions and the statements will be completely out of order if you think of it within those political contexts. And again, I'm not a political scientist, you know, open to what the contrarian views will be. But again, you could see why a statement like that, you know, is going to mean. And again, contextualizing that within our political history, you know, where in 2013 we had, you know, well, in 2008 we had very small margins, you know, determining who ultimately won power. We contested that in 2013 and 16. You can find a reasoning, you know, some sort of a justification for you know, him making statements like that on a political platform. Can people take it out of context?
Absolutely.
That can happen.
Absolutely.
Do we expect that young people, because again, that was a room with about, what, 90% young people, right? Do we expect that young people are going to take that statement out of context and, you know, pull machetes and things?
No.
I think that as a country, you know, the last 30 years of our politics has shown us that we can't do that, right? We've seen what that, you know, could possibly mean, right, for political stability and for security and ultimately the economy as a whole. So I don't think that, and I understand he's a lawyer, right? So clearly I'm sure he's very mindful of all of these. And I think he indicated at a point that, yeah, we'll do everything that's, you know, legal within their context. So if you think of this from just a pure competitive political standpoint, I wouldn't find, you know, anything particularly wrong with it. But again, I'm not a political scientist. Right. I'm not a security person. I just enjoy what, you know, implications of policy making for that has implications for how apply public funds really look. And maybe this touches on that, but I think that, you know, overall he managed to rally, you know, the young people, and they should just tell you that perhaps may be a reflection of how young people are feeling in the country today.
Right. I have to agree with everything that you say. I also have to say that, you know, he just looked different. He looked different. He vibed different. I kind of like this
look a bit energetic.
Yeah. I like this youth leader. Yeah.
They look a bit energetic.
I liked.
You like the energy.
I liked.
Young people and energy can be problematic.
Important.
If you don't put caps on the energy, you never know what they end up with.
It was a youth event. It was a youth event. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay, so let's go to the first speaker. I'd wanted us to start with the NDC's General Secretary, but he's not youth.
No, he's
not. So let's go
Honorable
to the
Fifi Kwete is
no.
not. He's not. I mean, if I'm not youth, he's not
He
youth.
can't be. You know when they ask the youth to stand up? I had to think about it for a minute. Do I stand up? Do I sit?
You are not youth. According to the UNDP and our own government policy on who, I mean, the National Youth Charter, which was now still hovering around, you know, some of those things in 2010. it defined who a youth is, right? I think 18 to what? Is it 35 or 30? 18 to 30, thereabout. If you're UNDP, then we may stretch to 35. I mean, we can't be. People say 40 is the new 20.
No,
get over it.
No, it's not.
You're old. You're in an income tax bracket that majority of the people are not in. So do what the adults do. Get beaten like everybody else. Don't go and hide behind you. No,
Youth.
No.
Okay, let's come to Edmond Combat. He had a lot to say about agriculture. I want us to play, just a bit of what he said.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to it. So let's watch Combat.
So, again,
I remember your big self, the likes of Combat Kosiobi. We warned this country that the rate at which public lands were being sold, there will be none left for future development. We will soon not have land for factories, we will soon not have land for hospitals, for doctors' bungalows and all of that. So it has been a long-standing crusade. And sometimes I
organizer joined us here and mentioned formulas of pain, of our hunger, which we have a formula for the 24-hour economy. And it's a very simple one. Formula 1-3-3. Same job, 3 people, 3 shifts. So when we say 24-hour economy, guys, you respond by saying formula 1-3-3. Can we do this? Youth, can we do this? 24-hour economy. 24-hour economy. When you meet the professors, the doctors who claim they don't understand 24-hour economy, tell them we the youth they called lazy. We have a formula for them to understand. It's very simple. Formula 1-3-3. Same job, 3 people, 3 shifts. Thank you so much. The National Youth Organizer joined us here and mentioned formulas of pain, of our hunger, which we have a formula for the 24-hour economy. And it's a very simple one. Formula 1-3-3. Same job, 3 people, 3 shifts. So when we say 24-hour economy, guys, you respond by saying formula 1-3-3. Can we do this? Youth, can we do this? 24-hour economy. 24-hour economy. When you meet the professors,
Welcome back. Formula 1-3-3. What do you think about that?
So I think it's part of the broader conversations that have been raging on, around the management of the economy itself and how we create jobs. Slogan's brilliant, if you ask me. I mean, I remember in 2008 when Free Senior High School came up. I was still a young policy analyst, and we struggled to win the public debate. I tell you what, in my years of doing policy work, 3 things I think are very important. One, when you want to deal with anything that policy has to address, the primary thing you should be worried about is communicating that in a manner that people care about it. If you don't, you lost the debate completely. Okay? So one, it has to be in a manner that people care about it. So almost emotional. What is it that you can say that evokes some level of emotion for people to care about the problem? The problem may be there. It may actually be impacting them in a manner that they should know, but they really haven't seen it, don't care about it. So how do you generate that emotion? So you need emotional communication that can resonate with people. We lost that debate because we were sounding too technical. We didn't understand the emotional connection that needs to be built in the message. So that's the first thing. Second, your solution has got to be technical. The solution can't be emotional. So you get emotional communication where people care about the problem and rally support behind you. But the communication, the solution needs to be technical. Implementation of the solution has got to be political. Political doesn't mean left and right. It means understanding who and who matters, right? for the purposes of the implementation of the solution. If it means who is going to oppose it across the political divide, so be it. But you need to have that appreciation. So those three things, emotional, technical, and political, are very important in any policy discourse. If you ask me, I think they got the emotional bit on this one right? Just like, Free Senior High School came in 2000, we lost the debate again in 2016. Now we're saddled with the ramifications of, what the policy really looks like. So in terms of getting, the young people in the room excited about what the proposition was going to be, I think that, when you say something like 133 now, I'm sure people can simply connect to what it is that they're saying, right? Then you and I can worry about the technicalities of it and whether or not it matters, as far as the fiscal basket is concerned. So message grade, if you ask me. The technicality of the implementation, however, I wouldn't expect to see that level of detail, being sort of outlined and discussed at a forum like that. But I think since the concept of a 24-hour economy was sort of popularized by, the former president of the Republic, if I'm right, based on my social media engagements and interactions, particularly on Twitter, I may say that there's been a struggle to find, what it is that works as a counter narrative or a counter message to that proposition. And that's, here I'm not talking about the mechanics of implementation, right? So the messaging around that, I think, has been great. The mechanics of implementation, like I said, I don't expect that to come from there. But if you have to hasten a few examples, I think that, 133, so one job to be done by 3 people,
3 shifts.
On 3 shifts, I'm presuming that. So here we're going to make presumptions, right? So assume that we're thinking.
Let us not presume. I mean, let's.
No, when I say presumption, so 3 people, 3 shifts means you're dividing the day's number of hours, 24 hours by 3.
It says the 24-hour economy will open new job markets.
Right.
It will share 1 job across 3 shifts.
Good.
And will create jobs in both private and public sectors. It will recruit additional personnel, promising enhanced lightening for security.
Okay.
So we are looking at specific industries like ports and harbor services, passport services, banking services, agro-processing services, construction, sanitization, waste management services, transport services, and financial institution services.
Great. So those are fine sectors. I mean, they're all part of the real sector of the economy, right? So you'd imagine that this proposition of 133, so the assumption I was going to say is that we have 24 hours in a day. So the presumption is that we divide the 24 hours by 3, everybody gets an 8-hour working shift. This is a presumption I'm making.
Right.
Perhaps that's not what it is. Right. So when somebody else is asleep, somebody else is going to be working. When somebody is, and I think we run that, if I'm right, in the health sector, for example. It may not be on the same scale, but I think people do a certain number of hours and then they shift around. It may not be the same. Here I'm just heckling it, so like an assumption here. So if you think of it that way, and you're somebody who appreciates the way the real sector of the economy is structured, there could be some value proposition in the proposal they've made, but there could be questions again for some other sectors. So my judgment will be that for the part of the economy that is controlled by the government, and again I haven't looked at the numbers in recent times, but if the purchasing power of government is anything to go by, there's a likelihood the government may control close to 50 or 60% of the economy using the government's purchasing power. Now that predominantly sits usually in the very administrative sectors of the economy, right? Government is not big in managing anything in tech, and banking controls just 2 banks. If you think of the real private sector, majority of the stuff in the private sector, very agro, very industrial, right? A lot of that is private sector. Even if they get some sort of a blended finance or support from government, it's primarily private sector driven. When you think about that, then you begin to wonder the actual mechanics by which 133 may be applicable in some of those sectors. But if you take the ports, and that's where things like the multiplier effect in economic theory begins to make sense, right? Because if you take something like the ports, every sector of the economy, whether it's on the services or agro or its industry, majority of them will import things through the ports, right, to support the things that do in the economy. If you have a port service, a port system that's running 24 hours consistently, nothing is being shut down, you tend to imagine that has some value proposition. There's some value proposition there. I mean, if you unlock that with some additional technological systems, I think that there's a great proposition there, right? If you think of passport services, for example, we have backlogs, right? That more often than not, we're told, it's either because these days you hear a lot of the absence of books for printing passports and things like that, right? Which we have deployed technological systems that haven't been able to solve. So if you think of that, and you also imagine a case where we want to use government policy to unlock, the labor market, then it will seem to make sense that you can perhaps, split that job up so you can have 3 different people working. As to, here we're not going to even get into the efficiency of it, because again, you've got a fundamental problem, and I think that was one of the things that was talked about, which is how do we create jobs for people? So the thinking hasn't really gotten to the efficiency, so to speak, of labor. In this country, we don't do that anywhere, not in the public sector and the private sector. But I think efficiency of labor, there's a lot of things that we do that we're not, going to do them at all, right? You can't have God knows how many people in the health sector, and for some reason we still struggle with the provision of healthcare services. When you combine that with things that are happening with, the dialysis machines that are not coming in, for example, it just complicates the problem. So I can see a case where those administrative functions on the side of the government that controls significant part of what the economy looks like, perhaps there could be something interesting there. So that if the ports, for example, is a place that something like this is able to deploy, that you can think of possible rippling and multiply effects that it may have on other value chains. That I can see. What I'll struggle to perhaps reconcile would be, say, pure private sector businesses that are already probably maybe, fully optimized, for example. So if I've got a production line, and and let's say I'm producing canned food, right, whether for the domestic market or export market, my production systems are optimized. Our production line is optimized, right? So there's a government policy that says, first of all, government can't compel us. They can only provide an incentive for us to do that.
And they have said that they will provide
an incentive, great.
Cash, tax breaks,
Okay, so
like
that incentive has to be enough, right? The incentive has to be enough to compensate me for any possible disruptions I may get in my production line. And my production line, bear in mind, is not responding to government policies. It's really thinking about what market really is. So have I got extra demand for my goods and services, for example? Is it in the domestic market? Is it in an export market? If I don't have off-takers, what's the point in expanding my productivity?
So expand productivity, we will find the markets for it. I mean, once you have the product, once you have the product,
which is why I'm saying it could be interesting for some sectors, right? But others maybe, like particularly the industrial sector, that's heavy private sector. I think it begins to look a bit more complicated, and perhaps these are questions we're asking that may help further fine-tune or perhaps narrow down. What I've struggled to see is when the debates have come up, particularly on social media or even in some policy circles, the reduction of this to mean that everywhere in this country is going to be 24. That's crazy. It's crazy talk. It can't be everywhere in this country becomes 20, unless I got the message wrong. But I don't think, at least as somebody who's paid attention to how these policy things work for a while, I don't think it means that all of a sudden the market woman at Bubulishina is going to do 24 hours. Crazy talk. That market woman has got other parts of her life that she has to deal with. So perhaps that's not it. So perhaps maybe if we push further, we're going to understand specific value chains like what has been listed here, for example, and the mechanics by which some of that will happen. And if they're able to get it done, why will anybody push against something that creates maybe 2/3 additional, employment opportunities for young people? No, it's not going to be a problem. If you account for the fiscal pressures, you should be fine.
I have to say this though. So clearly, policy communication is not for everybody.
No, it's not. You can be the smartest person in the room, Mama.
I mean,
you can be the smartest person in the room. Nobody can. Like, first of all, look, policy is solving a problem about a group of people. If you think you have the sharpest solution, if you don't make the people they don't care about it. And if they don't care about it, you don't even get into the room where resources are for you to be able to deploy the resources to solve the problem. I've learned that the hard way. I've had to lose several debates. You learn this the hard way. It's the way policy works. People have to care about it. So a lot of the stuff that's going around now, you see, they have to elevate the issue for people to care about it. So who's that primary stakeholder? The person you're talking about here, the conversation was young people. How can I make young people care about the economy? Perhaps this is the best way to make them care about what's happening in the labor market. You can put economists in the room. They'll talk about the same stuff. Nobody cares. You see the way I'm talking? If you put 2 or 3 other economists in the room, it's the same way they're going to talk. Oh, and the productivity is this, and the labor market is that, and so, if you do this, the frontiers one. What? Nobody's going to care about it. We've known the unemployment statistics for so long. The recent one I'm seeing is that, about a third of the young people in this country are unemployed. That's a statistic. That's something that we will care about. But when you tell a young person, I'm going to do 133, or you tell a young person free senior high school like we saw in 2008, when people were actually asking for specific details and we didn't get, now we have eggs on our faces, that communication, I think, is important. It's not only at the policy formulation stage, I should say. Even as you're implementing, or when you do monitoring and evaluation, those specific details have to be communicated to people in a manner that is going to resonate with them. If you don't, you're lost. You're lost completely.
Yeah, you're lost. Sorry that I'm rushing you, only because I want us to go through a lot of the things that were said. Do you find, Lamisi's communication of the 24-hour economy, did you find it effective? Did you find that she was able to connect, in a way that perhaps maybe a politician could not have?
Absolutely. First of all, the human being is young. If that was the former president of the republic saying that, no, people in the room may be excited about that, but no. So first of all, the messenger was very young. So that again may give some people the opportunity to say, okay, that's somebody that's like me. She articulates like me, sounds like me. All right, good. Then finds a simple way to tell me what job creation is going to be. So for the target audience, I'd imagine that perhaps was perhaps the most effective way they could have done it. Not bringing some, 55 or 60-year-old seasoned, statesman who would, maybe that message may not sink well. Right.
I think the same can be said for all the others. Let's just say that for all the others and keep that, that bit of house cleaning out of the way. That, it was effective to use these young people.
Perhaps. And it was International Youth Day, right? 1 or 2,
I think, dropped the ball. But overall, no, actually just one dropped the ball. But overall, they were brilliant, I have to say. And then we go to Edmond Combat, who I announced earlier. So, sorry, the video you watched was of Lamisi on the economy, specifically the 24-hour economy. Now, let's watch Edmond Combat on agriculture.
And the first thing he wants to do is a program he's initiating called the Ejumawura program. This program is going to ensure that every year, every 12 months, 10,000 businesses are established by young people. 10,000 businesses. Not 10,000 jobs, but 10,000 businesses. And these businesses will be made to employ at least between 20 to 50 people over the 4-year period. So with the first year in 2025, at the end of that year, we will have created approximately 500,000 jobs. And the first thing he wants to do is a program he's initiating called the Ejumawura program. This program is going to ensure that every year, every 12 months, 10,000 businesses are established by young people. 10,000 businesses. Not 10,000 jobs, but 10,000 businesses. And these businesses will be made to employ at least between 20 to 50 people over the 4-year period. So with the first year in 2025, at the end of that year, we will have created approximately 500,000 jobs. And the first thing he wants to do is a program he's initiating called the Ejumawura program. This program is going to ensure that every year, every 12 months, 10,000 businesses are established by young people. 10,000 businesses.
Yes. Are you convinced? Agriculture. Are you?
I like the question. Am I convinced?
Are you convinced?
As a civic actor, I am never satisfied with anything. I should get that out of the blocks. I'm never, as a young person and a civic actor, I think
relatively young person.
You could say that. I think that when I look at our country and where our potentials really lie, we could do a lot more. So I'm never satisfied with whatever results or whatever I hear. But is the issue that was just talked about one that is germane and goes to the heart of what the economy today looks like? I'd imagine that it is, right? And I say that because jobs have for the longest time been a problem. When I've had the opportunity of tracking the data, it takes 10 years for the labor market, right, to expand by about 2 million people. Every 10 years, you get the labor force expanding by about 2 million. So if you start from 1992, by 2000 to 2002, thereabout, we had added, and again, you're accounting for people that are coming and those that are dying, right? So when you take a net movement, you're getting 2 million every 10 years, right? That means that you have to be creating 2 million jobs. This is the total number of labor force you have. We haven't even accounted whether all that labor force is fully optimized and they all have jobs. We haven't done that yet. So if every 10 years you get 2 million coming in, it means every 10 years you got to get 2 million new jobs, right? So it doesn't matter whether the economy becomes a bit more digital, it becomes very, kukuase, like we've been saying, we have a machete, whatever it is, you got to get 2 million new ones every 10 years. In my lifetime, I don't know if in a decade we've gotten 2 million new jobs. I don't know. I'll stand to be corrected. We haven't, right? And I've tracked that data from 92. So the concept or the problem of job creation is a problem, and I think all the governments have attempted to address it. What he speaks to, I think, perhaps is a much more interesting way of imagining the problem compared to what we have seen, done before, which is that rather than, saying that we are going to directly employ X number of people or Y number of people, and I hope they haven't done that anywhere else, right? We would rather create the opportunity for young people to create jobs, and then through that they may be able to get additional people employed. It's not clear to me whether the number of 20 to 50 and 500,000 over a certain number of years works. And again, I've seen some very interesting numbers thrown around by this government, for example, around how many jobs have been created through different social intervention programs, and some of them have been very alarmed. Right, I had the opportunity of discussing this with May Still rest in peace, former deputy minister who died, John Kuma, when he was leading the NEIP, on radio at a point, and I had to show him that it's not possible. You can't create jobs when the economy contracts. That's not common sense. It's almost stupid. If you tell me that, yes, it's almost as imagine I'm stupid. The economy can't contract, and then you say that you created a certain number of jobs. So we went through, he says he's created this. I said, okay, you've created that. I said, okay, then I pulled up the GDP data and showed him all the sectors that have contracted over a 3-year period we were looking at. So when you created those jobs, where did it go? And I understand GDP is a flow measure, and that's beginning to get funny, beginning to get complicated. But the common sense argument there is the economy cannot contract for you to say you created jobs. So when you get the messaging thrown like it's the same problem, but you're imagining the problem differently, which means that, different businesses that are likely in the private sector have to start looking out for. Even if it's a young person who's unemployed, he clearly knows what the agenda is going to be. Nobody's going to get up and come and say, I've employed you, come and do X, Y, Z. But how do we find ourselves such that we can leverage those opportunities? And I'm sure, even in the past regimes of the government, they've had similar programs where the target has been, how do we get small and medium scale enterprises, provide opportunities for them, and off the back of those opportunities, they can employ a person or two. What we haven't done well as a country is, following through provisions that we have in our directive principles of state policy that mandates, the continual implementation of policy and programs. And because we haven't done that, you get this very chunky approach to it. So the messaging, again, I can't, have a question with the messaging. The numbers, we have to again start looking at, what you have behind those numbers and the technicalities of implementation. Perhaps what I'll say to wrap that up will be, if you think, because the aim is of businesses, for the business to create employment, you have to ask a question: what are the primary bottlenecks for businesses? Because if you don't deal with those bottlenecks of businesses, then the business doesn't have the opportunity to be able to employ anybody. The bottlenecks of businesses, if you take data from the AGI and you sort of try to figure out what the AGI has been gauging, what are the constraints and the difficulties, you are likely going to come up with things like, challenges with access to finance, challenges with, access to stable energy.
That's what I was looking for. I was actually looking for that,
right?
Because I think it features prominently here.
Okay. Right. So those are likely some of the challenges. So you're going to have maybe, the general price level of goods and services, which have in the last 3 years have just gone through the roof. We see some moderation downwards now, but those will be primary constraints, right? And access to very stable, and well-equipped, labor to support industry. When you isolate those, you take away things like, excessive taxes and import levies, the stuff that usually bother the business environment, right? Then you begin to find out, okay, what will the propositions for addressing those bottlenecks be? Because once those bottlenecks have effectively been dealt with, then you have an opportunity to say, hey, young people can do X, Y, and more people. So I guess those mechanics, right? And again, I'm not expecting that those details are going to be ironed out at a very politically charged, environment like that. But a reimagination of the problem away from saying, okay, let's go and employ X number of people, to seeing that there's got to be a transient point. I think that for me, perhaps that may be the novel thing around the proposition that, the young person who just spoke to, and perhaps it's the way we should be imagining the problem now, right? Everybody complains that the public sector is full. I'm not saying it. The former finance minister said it. The current finance minister said it. The finance minister before this government equally said it. So the question is, how do we create the right environment so that still people get jobs, but we don't directly hire from the public sector? And I think that's an interesting way of imagining the problem. I see you're shaking your head. I am. For me, it's interesting how a conversation on agriculture takes us straight to this issue of job creation. And here they headline it job creation and skill development. Skill development.
It's interesting that
it dovetails into what is happening within the broader. Yes, because ag is one of the pillars of the economy, whether we like it or not, right? If you chop up the real sector, you have ag, you have industry, and you've got services. And ag for a long time was a major contributor. Now it's not so much. But now it's not so much. I mean, ag is not doing as much as it should, despite the investments we have made over the years. One of the things that, for me, even when you think of agriculture, that I think the political parties perhaps need to think about very well. We've got this very big lake, all the way that traveling all the way to the north. How do we sort of build a proper, agro-industrial strategy that optimizes what we're doing around the banks? Perhaps it's going to help us cut down significantly on food imports, right? And that means you perhaps optimize things like, transport on the Volta, people stop driving across a corridor. It will tell you about two pontoons doesn't mean anything when people are doing agriculture. It doesn't mean anything, right? You got to prioritize it. So I think that you had some of those, commitments made there, but I think they can be a bit more. They can be a bit more imaginative, right? They can. I think they can be a bit more ambitious, with agro-industrial strategy. If the plan really is not employ directly, but make sure the environment is created for young people to create jobs, and then, help us get to that employment. I think they got to be a bit more imaginative. They got to be a bit more ambitious. Otherwise, the messaging, like I said,
Wilder.
people care about it.
Should be wilder, to use youthful terms, right?
Yeah.
we should get wilder, in the agri, sector. But overall, I think that, again, you can't shoot the messenger, can you? Let's, quickly move now to Festus on education.
Right.
Yeah, so let's watch Festus and his presentation on education.
I'm sure the next one is going to shock you. I want you all to stay with me. No fees stress. No fees stress. What are we saying? President John Mahama is simply promising that, one, for all university entrants into level 100, you are not paying academic fees. No academic fees for all level 100 students. But if you are not excited, I'm sure the next one is going to shock you. I want you all to stay with me. No fees stress. No fees stress. What are we saying? President John Mahama is simply promising that, one, for all university entrants into level 100, you are not paying academic fees. No academic fees for all level 100 students. But if you are not excited, I'm sure the next one is going to shock you. I want you all to stay with me. No fees stress. No fees stress. What are we saying?
So, we had Festus there. I have to say that my personal favorite, on all of
the list,
has to be the completion of the E-blocks.
Okay.
That's my personal
You're a
favorite.
patriotic Ghanaian then.
But it has to be the completion
You
of
are
the
a
E-blocks.
patriotic Ghanaian, I'll tell you. Because your director of principal state policy mandate and require that, they are going to continue and finish there. And it's only commonsensical that if one, because the governments are seen in a continuum. We don't see this one different, right? So long as we're applying public funds, make sure it's finished. It's only the competitive nature of our politics sometimes that means that people want to label things, to individuals and to governments and to, political parties. And so it makes it a little difficult, right, for some of them. And they take very expedient decisions. Otherwise, I think that I can see the patriotism. I see the patriotism in you.
I don't like the way you're saying that. It's almost as if you're mocking me.
I'm not. And so you see, here's the thing. I think that if all Ghanaians had a view like this and made these demands, we won't have, the wastages we see. Let me blow your mind. So a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman from, I think it's from Harvard, if I'm right, Harvard or Yale. He came and was stationed at the Ministry of Finance, and it did an evaluation of all public infrastructure projects in the country. Give or take about 38,000 of them. Plenty, right? And he found that for majority of the projects, we actually don't continue them. Those that we end up continuing are those projects that had very tight fiscal rules behind them. So they're usually the projects that we're not financing from the consolidated fund, for example, right? Those were the projects out, because you go to a district, a hospital has been built. The reason why the other government will come, or we actually see the project to its completion, is because the fiscal rules behind it were tighter, right? So somebody was adequately monitoring. We say, okay, you have to do X phase before there's disbursements. The money is not sitting in consolidated fund. Money is sitting somewhere else. And we finished those projects anyway. Unfortunately, only 38% of the projects have been finished. So it tells you that that's something that is a problem that we all look forward to. So I'm not mocking you. I'm only saying that you found a very emotional way,
Right.
A very emotional way of articulating something that people should be worried about. And so I think that point goes without saying. And I think there were indications as well of a continuation of a free senior high school policy.
Yes.
I mean,
Let me read that. It says, provide sustainable, dedicated funding for the free SHS policy to improve food quality for free SHS and expand access by building more infrastructure in already existing secondary
I may disagree on ideological lines, you know, on the continuation of free senior high school program, purely on ideological grounds, subject to what our fiscal basket can contain. And I've been on the side of the debate that has consistently said, hey, you know, you need proper means testing to be able to do that stuff. In the absence of means testing, I don't think you should be doing this wholesale thing that somebody gets to go to Ghana International School or junior high school, then comes to Wesley Girls and then enjoys, you know, free senior high school education. And the argument is that but their parents are Ghanaian as well. Yeah, but their parents are, nobody's saying they're not. The parents are Ghanaian, their parents are taxpayers, nobody's saying they're not. Is that the best application of your funds, subject to the fact that you've got a lot of needy people who don't have it? Perhaps not. So you need a lot more targeting to be able to get that stuff done. Right, so on those sort of ideological and hard, you know, hard reform stance that I think should push us to a point where our social intervention programs broadly don't go and benefit just a few. If you take a scholarship scheme, for example, we've seen what the reports and, you know, the last couple of, you know, months or years have been. Right, it's a problem where the poor don't benefit. However, having said that, and I had to make that disclosure, the idea to continue, I think, makes sense. And if they indicate further that, you know, we have to find a way to broaden it so that even those in the private sector, again, I don't understand how the mechanics with that is going to look like. And have we resolved the problem around means testing? I'm not sure. Perhaps not. But again, the idea of continuing what has been done now, you know, speaks to a certain acknowledgement that there will be positive sides of this. And, you know, make no mistake, there are a lot of young people that have had the opportunity of enjoying 3 years education. Account for quality, right? Account for quality that, you know, people will always be people. Some have tried to bastardize the program. Some have tried to, you know, siphon funds. Some have tried to make sure that rather than, you know, pay money to buy food, people are bringing maggot infested. We've seen the videos. If we account for that, there's a young person who ordinarily wouldn't have been able to get the opportunity to, who has. So if they acknowledge and they see that and they want to continue that, I think you got to pat them on the back for that. Accounting for issues of quality. I'm not sure what they are going to do with, you know, the issues of quality assurance, ensuring that, you know, women benefit from that, and the like. Then there was an interesting one about, you know, the free for first years in college. And again, I say anyone who listens to that, and here I'm going to attempt to wear a political scientist hat, right? If you listen to that, you have to hear that from two perspectives. And take that caveat I issued from the beginning and what you do regarding policy, so emotional communication, technical deployment, and political implementation. If you have that at back of you and look at that proposition very well, you cannot but admire what has been done. You cannot but admire it. And I'll tell you why. Because, again, you have about 60 or 70,000, if my numbers are right, college graduates every year, which means you can get roughly about that same number that may get in. How many votes did you win tying with? The tying was, you know, determined by about 40,000 votes. That's almost twice that. Okay? So if you're really speaking politically and you're aiming to win elections, 2024, political scientists in me says speaking a language that a certain section of the voting population understands.
It works.
And it works. Does that voting population understand what they're saying? Forget me and what I'll come and say about fiscal policy and the fiscal implications of a decision like that. Does that person in that 70,000 understand what it means for them? My argument is yes, they do. So if you've got a counter message to a proposition like that, you have a much harder work to do. It's not going to wash to simply say you've gone to look at the fiscals of the government. That's not working. That's excellent messaging to a certain target population. The question is, that target population, do they see an immediate benefit for them? What we should acknowledge and understand and accept now is that the ordinary Ghanaian voter is not a long-term thinker. Forget it. It's not happening.
Give me what you can give me now.
They've gotten used to the challenges around the delivery of public services, which is why the politicians themselves struggle to even campaign. They struggle. CDD puts the estimate, well, it costs $100 million to vote to campaign as president. Where's the money going to? All right, so the ordinary voter today is not somebody who says, what are the 5-year implications? The guy's hungry now. What are the 5-year implications? You got to be real. That's the expectation of the ordinary voter. So if that voter is hearing that message, I think is excellent messaging and is speaking to a need, and that person's need is a very short-term one that is being met, which is, why do I have to pay to get into college? I'll take it. I was given free to go through basic to senior high school. If I get another free loading, I'm okay. But I understand it's not free either, because they're going to sort of reorganize, the student loan trust fund to be able to satisfy that. And that will require a reimagination of what the SLTF itself is going to look like, because SLTF has had its own issues. But again, if you think of what has been structured, you cannot but admire. Like I said, speaking a language that a certain sector of the population understands, we can get into the fiscals of it. What is the average cost of college level education? Let's say I don't know how much people are paying for fees now, but even if you peg that number at 2,000 or 3,000 cedis, per semester. They're doing for a year, right? So multiply by, say they're going to pay 6,000 cedis per academic year. 6,000 by 70,000 people. It's almost about 42 million or 420 million, right? So give or take 420 million additional fiscal pressure, and you have that for a year. Those are gone. You get new ones coming. You're going to pay that same amount of money. But those who have left are now going to depend on themselves because they're going to use SLTF, etc. You are alleviating some pressure that the person immediately sees. So again, in messaging, I can question that. We can talk about the fiscals, right? But if you push the two major political parties in a very competitive political environment, I'm saying that if you go after them for this, they're going to ask you where you found money for free senior high school. Where you found it, they'll tell you that they'll find it the same way.
But it's interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting that today you have politicians who lauded free SHS. Criticizing this.
Yeah, questioning it.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, but the evidence was, which is why I'm saying that those of us that were on the other side of the debate lost it. We lost it because the market woman, all she understands is Mbambeko school free. All right? She understood. The message spoke directly to her. Like this message is speaking directly to about 70,000 kids who may get into college every year. Okay? And despite the questions about sustainability of free senior high school and where we're going to keep getting the money and, whether we can make the right, investments, whether we can guarantee quality assurance, and whether we should do means testing, those very difficult questions were not answered. They tried to iterate as they were implementing the policy. Some of them worked, which is why you're hearing these guys say, they're going to try to find a way by which they can fine-tune it.
So there's some kind of, how do I say it? They've sort of seen the
they've seen what the challenges
are,
and then they're trying to reimagine how they can make that better. It's the same thing here, right? So if I sit as somebody who looks at what the fiscal basket of the country is and what we can and cannot contain, I'd argue that perhaps don't do it. This is what I'd argue. But that's me looking purely at the fiscal basket. I'm not a competitive political actor. When you think...
You're not trying to win an election.
I'm not.
You're not trying to have an upper hand.
Right? And yes, there could be potential fiscal implications, right? But we will iterate when we get there. And that's what I hear when I see this, that provide that short-term gain, because the person is equally looking for that short-term gain. They want what's in it for me now. How do you alleviate my pressure now? My mother can't pay the fees now. Stop telling me about what the debt service ratio of the country is. My mother can't pay the fees now for the first year. I'm not going to pay it.
Do you find that as good policy?
The goodness.
Do you think it's good policy?
Goodness is such a very...
It serves a purpose. It serves a purpose. Like you say, we can have the quality conversations later, but there are people who actually got the opportunity to go to senior secondary school because of the free SHS. There's been some education, there's been, some lessons learned from there. Hopefully this one gets implemented better. Yes, there are questions to be answered for the future, but today, now, do you find that it's good policy?
Good
social intervention.
Well, good social intervention. So that is a way we imagine social intervention programs, right? So whether the program is good or not depends on the type of program. So if we narrow specifically to this one, the question will be, when you say it's good, is good in terms of what? If we pick and say somebody wouldn't have been able to get to go through senior high school, and they did, or if they did, what is the benefit of that? Somebody may also say, well, but our challenges in financing that crippled the fiscal basket. We had to go borrow money. That now has the government locked out of the capital market, and we can't raise additional funds for other projects elsewhere. I'm not saying free senior schools, only responsibility is a contributing factor. When somebody looks at that, says, well, perhaps, maybe it was not time to have done the free stuff. Maybe we should have done means testing. And means testing will still get somebody to go to school anyway. So my point is it good policy? It is good policy if we had means testing behind it, so that the kid who went to GIS didn't get to. I'm not saying it doesn't deserve it, but under the circumstances it doesn't benefit. But does somebody else benefit? Yes. So something like this, will some poor person benefit? Yes. But the way we think about the positive impact of policy is not to isolate a few positive effects and say that's a justification for the effectiveness of policy. Right. It's not.
Overall.
Do you know what I mean? So think clearly about who the primary beneficiary had to be. Here you're aiming for poor people. So if the person got admission to go to Legon, and imagine this very well, you had kids that are about 500,000 or so kids that are in basic school. Majority of them are in your public schools, right? And your public basic schools are not the most, affluent. They're not the most that we are having significant investment being made compared to private. When you filter that and get to, and people say that's not filtering, the BC exam filters. You don't have the same number of schools that you have at the BC or senior high school level. So clearly there's a filtration, right? So it's usually those that are better off. So all your private school kids now get into the public school. So you have almost narrowed these poor kids. When you're going to college, if I went to Aguna Kwenyako Senior High School and somebody went to Adisadel College and the person who went to Adisadel came from Airport International, right? Clearly, he's getting into Legon and I may not, because I may not have gotten all the resources that I needed. So there's further marginalization up there, right? And then we provide free fees for them first year. See? Same means testing problem. So I'd imagine a case where, because of the possible defects like that, there should be proper measures to ensure that rather than putting an additional 6,000 cedis in the pocket of a rich man who could have afforded 4 or 5 times the school fees, we find a way to make sure that that kid still gets it. Right. Do you get what I mean? Right. So it's great as an intervention, but if you think of the social orientation of it, which is to get the poor, bring them up to power, it requires a bit more imagination. And usually that imagination is hard stuff. It's getting a lot of data around them, mapping that out properly. And our political class usually struggle. They don't do the hard work. That's my only question. Otherwise, if we can fix that, out of the 70,000 and you're able to narrow down in terms of 30% of them are actually people that can afford, why not? Wow. Why not? But a few East Legon, East Airport, residents, we've seen scholarship programs for cocoa farmers' kids. Now you have people who, and here you're just opening the basket for everybody. I get the argument. They're all Ghanaians. Everybody should benefit. I don't question that, but I'm saying we're not sharing it because everybody's a Ghanaian. I mean, that's stupid analogy.
Who needs it?
The point is, who needs it? That's the essence of government. The essence of government is not for everybody.
Who needs it?
That you have all the time. You expect people to be able to engage themselves and figure out how they can, build the right system to support themselves economically. The reason you get the state involved is that free flow and that free engagement almost always creates inequities. So you want to use government policy and the machinery of government to bridge these inequities. Where the unintended consequence of it going to benefit the rich or widen the inequity gap, you see it, it doesn't make sense to go ahead and still deploy. It is a different case if you can't anticipate that there's an unintended consequence that may actually damage, widen the gap further. If you can't see that, by all means, deploy. But if you see it, collect that data and then adjust. But here we know it. We know it. So I'm saying this is policy. Maybe they've got the details that addresses that gap, right? Because student loan trust fund, even though it's open, people got to apply and got to justify. You got to get guarantors and things like that. So maybe they've got a mechanism like this behind. And if they got behind it, trust me, brilliant. It wins them elections, but also provides an immediate, respite to somebody who actually may not have the resources to get through.
I was insistent solution. So I'm looking at the time.
Yes.
I wish we could rush through the rest.
Yeah.
So if we could, rush through the rest. I'm guessing there's something that Gloria had to say, and rush through the rest quickly so we can get through these real fast.
Simply promising.
Any money your insurance scheme is excellency. Every all day Baba Boyan. Sound policy is excellency the bay. Ebeboa, metaleni, war hairdresser ni, fiteni, carpenters. Yasha informal sector national. Ebemaya Kenya, Nadachi, Ye Juma. Ni yekoye mpeni fie mu a yenso besumi bia yetumi anya kakra bebo yechidom enya mo de.
President Mahama will also prioritize the development of sports in schools.
Nasema esiso any money your insurance scheme is excellency every all day ba beboaye. Sound policy is excellency the bay. Ebeboa, metaleni, war hairdresser ni, fiteni, carpenters. Yasha informal sector national. Ebemaya Kenya, Nadachi, Ye Juma, ni yekoye mpeni fie mu a yenso besumi bia yetumi anya kakra bebo yechidom enya mo de.
President Mahama will also prioritize the development of sports in schools. When you train them young, it's hard to beat them. So this time around, we're going to inculcate sporting activities into our classroom work so that
Yes, we are back. I would say this would fall under job creation and skill development again.
Yeah.
So to equip youth in skills and job opportunities by decentralizing the Accra Digital Center to other regions, to decentralize recruitment into security agencies, to support young entrepreneurs with startup funds, and accelerate the pace for already existing youth-owned businesses. The Almighty Women's Development Bank, to ensure gender equality by providing funds to millions of women across the country with training, etc. So, this comprehensive plan to address youth unemployment and empower young Ghanaians. So we heard from the dressmaker, we heard from the, artist,
Again, on messaging, can you fault the argument?
No.
On messaging, again, you can't fault the argument. What I'd say about this one, and perhaps some of what has come earlier, is that if you take a very close look at provisions we have within the Constitution, and you sort of extend that even to other legal and regulatory frameworks that we have developed around the establishment of some very specific institutions. NEIP, for example, is there. The GA now has a very specific act. So the GA is now and is a creature of Parliament. It is no longer somebody's program that's sitting somewhere, and is designated to do very specific things, including decentralizing its operations across the country. We have our district assemblies. Common fund that has its own mechanisms around how decentralization should happen and how we should, make investments into different sectors of the economy at a very local level. If we were truthful as a people and abided by those rules, these would not be necessary, is the point I'm making. Do you get me? So you can't question the message, because the message almost resonates and is reflective of what we as a people have seen over time, that we have established other institutions for. So it's almost recalling the things that we have said we will do and drawing attention to the fact that we're going to do them. So I can't question it, but I only add that we have to think about how to strengthen our local government systems properly, because if if those were working well, there's no need to be saying we got to decentralize anything, right? But that's a monster that I'm sure our politicians will not want to touch. Here's why. We have been singing decentralization through Professor Kwame Nkrumah, one of the Hoyts, has been writing extensively about decentralization for the longest time in this country. However, all we have done is to decongest government offices. That's all we've done. So you take a passport office and we decongest it. So we take the pressure off our car and create, when we had 10 districts, we create a few regional offices. That's all we do. True decentralization is not decongestion of offices. It's actually a devolution of power for decision making. And that devolution it also requires fiscal decentralization. But we don't. So we take all our taxes and every money, we put all of that together and say only 5% should go to local government. It should go to this assembly's common fund for distributions and this assembly for development work. 5. But we keep the 95 at the center. But we have been singing let's decentralize longest. So if the local assembly is supposed to do anything that is entrepreneurial development, when are they, first of all, their disbursements are quarters behind. Right? Now, because our governments over time know how ineffective the district assembly system has been, because of the problem I just outlined to you, they try to decentralize outside of that regime. So when they, and yes, to decentralize out of that regime is to set up a government entrepreneurial program and then go and say we have decentralized it. So we have an office here, an office here, an office here. Then we second them to somebody else. Or you set up the office in Accra and the office goes around the country and say we're doing innovation pitching. People should come and pitch their business. It's crazy. You can't have a decentralization policy we're talking about for the last 40 years and somehow not do this. It's counterintuitive. You can't behave like that, right? So, can you question the message? No. Is that the right thing we should do? Yes. Have we been doing it? We've not been doing it effectively. So, if I hear this, there's some excitement behind it, right? But like I said before, you got to complement it with making sure that the solutions are, as you would say, sustainable, right? So that I completely move. When I think of social intervention programs in this country, I've completely had that reality check. I used to be on the side that has sustainable. Can we keep getting funding for it? The political system we have doesn't think like that. You're completely delusional if you're sitting and thinking there's a social intervention program and people are thinking about sustainability of it. It doesn't work that way. I stand to be corrected if somebody can point me an alternative evidence. Show me a social intervention program deployed in this country and we thought about it sustainably. If you take all of them and look at how we are financing them, yeah, you see the budget money is put together. If you chop it up properly, the World Bank is in there, EDF is in there, somebody else somewhere is in there. We are not getting to a point where we are self-generating, self-financing and doing. You want to say LEAP and all these other ones, go and look at who is financing them. So I've come to the harsh reality that when we think of social intervention programs in this country, sustainability is not a narrative. So what is it that we can do that can be done? Is that good? I don't think it's good. I'm just saying that's the reality check. And if that's the reality check, the question you should ask is, what are the people asking for? And I say the people are asking for what is in it for them today. The people are not thinking 10 years. And even though you've got a responsibility as a policymaker or the leader to make them see that 10 years, we've destroyed the incentives for seeing 10 years. We have damaged it completely. So majority of the people are not looking up to that. So if you think today, what are those things that can alleviate those pressures? Something like this, I don't think is completely out of order. It's not. It's really, really not. Because young people are looking for those jobs, right? So if you've got an entrepreneurial program, how are we decentralizing? How are we making sure that persons with disabilities are actively brought into the conversation? How are we making sure that the atypical innovators and young people are doing things in Fantakwa and all these districts that are away from the district capitals and the influence of power? How are they sort of brought into it? I'd imagine that this will make sense. The question about sustainability, though, if we decide to get there, then we're thinking about much deeper things around whether those businesses themselves are going to be businesses that actually add value to the economy, right? Whether the people can actually generate the necessary returns that are needed to keep their lives sustained. And that's a completely different conversation. Again, I don't expect to see these details but are the ideas okay? Can't question it.
I'm sitting here wondering if I should be happy or if I should be sad.
You should be happy, Amma. Okay. What's there to be sad about?
I'm sitting here wondering.
The message is great.
Because of course, the message is great, and I appreciate that. I think we've sort of over elaborated, on that. But it's not even about this specific one. It's not about the NDC's youth manifesto. No, it's not about that. It's about the word you don't like.
Sustainability.
Yes.
Oh, I like it. I just think that it's.
Yes, because without that in any of our social interventions, I mean, how far can we go? So we do these ad hoc policies that cater to our needs today, tomorrow.
That's all we have done over time.
And then what happens?
Show me one single policy that. When you say sustainable, right? You're looking at an intervention that actually. So if you think of it purely as social intervention, the person is living in a certain social state. The state gets, either by regulation or whatever, makes that injection. Okay, majority of the time is finance, really. So how do we sort of uplift them? But uplift them in a manner that they can subsequently subsist on their own of the state. Okay.
Show them how to fish.
The point is that leg of the conversation, a lot of the time, we are not prepared to do the hard work. I'll give an example. If you take LEAP, it's supposed to be that cash grant that the person who is abjectly poor can't do anything about. So you give them a cash grant that they can use to buy and smoothen the consumption. So can he buy 3 square meal, right? That's what you do. We're doing 60. The last time I looked at those now, I think they said they've increased it. 68 Ghana, every other month or something like that. Woefully inadequate. But again, that part of the population are those that typically cannot even put food on the table. Now, a study I did some years ago, in my old life, produced very interesting results. That the people took the cash, but rather than buy goods and services, some of them immediately started things like very petty trading with the money, right? And so 68 Ghana, if you're in Accra, 68 Ghana can buy you water, but the person who lives far away provides that immediate short-term relief. Then the lesson of the back was that, okay, why don't we just increase the money so that they can do better trade activities, right? So you can do more buying and selling, more petty trading, right? Okay. Assuming you did that, then that person over time gets wind of the program because they don't need that immediate cash any longer. That will get into what you're talking about, sustainability. Well, but here's the question. When prices all of a sudden go through the roof because you messed up the macros, and inflation went to 50%, 58%, I think, and the prices of the stuff all of a sudden went up. You've made nonsense of that investment that you made years ago. Because then that person now struggles to actually buy the stuff to feed on. So you would have done the intervention today, you'd have destroyed it with other things. And that's the conversation we don't want to have. So I think social intervention, we want to help the people bring them up to par. The only way those injections will make sense is that policy at the macro level has to make sense. And it has to make sense not only once, it has to make sense through time. But we destroy that one. We destroy that one because we decide to do the politically sexy things. That then throws the fiscals out of gear. Then the ramifications are that the person then struggles. You see what I mean? So they have equally learned that what I got to do today to survive today. And that's the most important thing for a lot of people. It's the most important thing. So whereas we think development has got to be long-term, and I agree, we talk about it all the time, I'm saying it's time to start getting these reality checks. That perhaps, as fine and sound as they are, what's the reality of the Ghanaian? What's the reality of policy-making space? When I've looked at that, I think that sometimes, having those wild conversations outside of the competitive political context we live in, sometimes as a policy analyst, you may miss a lot. You may miss a lot about what is actually happening and moving things. You get lost out on it. So is the idea great? Based on the conversation we've been having so far, I don't think you can question it. I don't think you can question it at all. If we think sustainability there, everything in Ghana, every decision they make,
every policy ever.
Which one is sustainable? Show me. Show me the one that we have been. Even the 6 heavy economic sectors. Show me one that is sustainable. Somebody say arrested the city, they arrested value and gave the key to IGP. Where is it?
Escaped.
So the concept of sustainability is the prices. We're going to bring prices down. Where is it? What are the prices now? Oh, and the electricity price will be. Where is it? And didn't the former Greek minister go and bring food crops and bring them to the Ministry of Agriculture and say he has created an alternative market? That's crazy, very crazy ways by which you think he did that. Where is it? right? We've been doing planting. Do you know planting for food and jobs? They say they were going to use to do agro-industrial. Where is it? We make all the investment, but you still go and buy the tomatoes and the price are out of the roof. So I'm saying that, and I wouldn't want to be forced into thinking it's not working, we have to force and make it work. It's the way we have thought about things. It's not working. Reimagine, like, what is your lived reality as a country? And I start to be corrected. The lived reality of the Ghanaian today is not 30s, it's not thinking 30 years. What are you talking about? A guy who's come out of senior high school, going to college, says you should think 30 years, the future unborn generation, when you are exporting the crude oil and distributing the contracts right now and only taking fiscal take about 15%. He's just not thinking that way. So how do you now reimagine how you reorganize your fiscals in a manner that allows you an opportunity to provide for them without necessarily undermining your ability to provide for them? And that's a very difficult equation to solve. I admit to you. It's not easy. But the ideas?
Great. So at least there's in terms of the now, you know, and in terms of where we are at, whether the propositions actually reflect an understanding of where the ordinary Ghanaian youth is. And yes, not all Ghanaians. People shouldn't mistake. I mean, the viewers that are watching us, the conversation we're having is not for everybody. I think these are questions that the young people went making demands of, former president and what they've been thinking about for young people. So it's not for everybody. If you are a 60-year-old dealing and struggling with pension, your matter is different. It's there. They're still screwing up your money. We'll figure out how to clean that up, right? The point is, when you take the average young person in the country today and you look at his needs, it'll be very interesting to see, because they're going to struggle. I project. But some of the stuff I've seen online, and perhaps those are not official, I don't know if they are. Some are crazy ideas, right? And it's difficult if you're incumbent. Very, very difficult if you're incumbent, to do that. Because when you have a surgical diagnosis by the majority, the major opposition political party in understanding, understanding what the pressure points for young people really are, like this, and they get the messaging correct, I wonder what else you can do. What are you going to tell somebody who understands 133? It doesn't work? Is that like, what are you going to say? That it doesn't work? You can't say free senior high school again. You can't. You said it. People have seen the problems with it. What do you say to 133? We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I think these guys have done an excellent job in terms of diagnosing what the message and the challenges and the real issues for the young people really are. Right, absolutely. Thank you. I'm looking at the time. We are done, but we have tomorrow to continue. This is a 2-day conversation, Patrick. It's a 2-day conversation. Tomorrow the squad joins us, and then we can make meaning of.
We'll see. It's a conversation.
We can also go to the Bukum Arena and look at what happened there.
There was. I understand there was Bukum Arena. I mean, it's a very charged, environment and time where everyone wants to find they want to find themselves in what the two major political parties are going to say, but find a message of hope basically. And I think the message of hope is not coming from the incumbent. If you're incumbent, nobody typically listens to you unless you are China or Russia who can control the entire machinery. So if you're incumbent, nobody gives you.
And we are struggling.
Oh yeah.
Well, at least I am. I don't know about you, but I am. I'm struggling.
I think that everyone is trying to find themselves, and so I will hasten to say that people who are looking for hope, in terms of what may happen in December and beyond, may perhaps be looking towards what the opposition has got to say and be paying attention to it to see if they can find themselves in it. And I think young people can find themselves in this.
Right.
It's my personal view. If somebody disagrees,
Right.
you're more than welcome to do it.
Thank you, Patrick. It's great to have you, back, because you are back. It's great to have you here. We continue tomorrow. We'll finish up on everything that was said, at the UPS auditorium, and then we will go to the Bukom, arena as well. Thank you for watching. Very short notice you made it. I have to say thank you again. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Thank you for contributing. I see your comments on Facebook. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we are back tomorrow, and the whole squad will join us tomorrow as we conclude on everything that was said at the UPSA, but also at the Bukom Arena. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye.